revolution is not going away.
This is the Ron Paul Liberty Report with Ron Paul, Daniel McAdams, and Chris Rossini.
We are all ambassadors of the Ron Paul doctrine, and it's so simple. Just tell the truth.
An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. You know, before we get into our program, we want to talk a little bit about, what's going on in the world, in the wars and going on in Iran and all these places. But I want to open up with a statement that was put out today. It was actually written by Dave DeCamp, who's very credible, and he was quoting Winslow Wheeler, who's considered a real expert on defense spending. Of course, I don't like to use the word defense or the military spending, the outrage. But anyway, I had to read it a couple times because it was because I want to believe, and I believe this is reliable information, but it's so different. It hasn't been, it's just been a matter of a couple of months. They talked about, less than $1 trillion for war. And now what Winslow is reporting is that he expects it to exceed $2.5 trillion when you add up all the nonsense that goes on. And that is just astounding. And I just can't see how the markets can operate with those kind of burdens. But the markets aren't working all that well. We have seen signs that the dollar is being used less and less, as the reserve currency of the world. And less people are holding dollars. And guess what? Even central banks are holding gold. I can't imagine. And that annoys some people who want to inflate forever. And this is the one problem that we have in figuring out exactly what's going on in Iran is who do we believe? See, I happen to have respect for the people I just talked about, and I believe this with, nothing can be perfect, and they recognize that themselves because the statistics that came out, just 6, 8, 10 months ago have already changed because the war effort has changed. The failures going on in the war has continued. So I think under those circumstances, it's really up for grabs on where this will end. But I do know one thing from studying history, you don't know exactly when it'll happen, but this is very, very destructive to the reserve currency. And it's beginning, it's starting, it's significant, and it's going to get much worse because percentage-wise, it's way down on the people and the countries holding dollars. And that means that we are going to be much poorer. Now, the first sign that this was destined to end up in bankruptcy was in 1971 because we had a pseudo gold standard where we honored foreign holders of dollars and gave them their gold back if they had $35 an ounce, which was crazy. But we had so much gold coming out of World War II that it went on and on until we had to say, hey, folks, we can't afford this anymore. We want to keep a little bit of gold in case we have a party or something. Mm-hmm. So they finally closed the door window. But that's in 71. But I think we're in the middle of the next step of admitting that we have the bankruptcy, and this means our lives will change, the economy is going to change, and every day you see and hear some of the problems that are going on. But nevertheless, Chris, I don't think our administration, in particular our president, is sort of leading us in the right direction, because the bigger the problems that we have, the more angry he gets at the people who were his best friends and who have defended his position on most of the issues. And the positions are the positions that he won the presidency with. And yet they're the people now receiving the sharpest criticism. And I'll tell you what, that's not a good political position to hold. Because a person can be successful in fibbing and manipulating and passing out favors, eventually the people catch on. And right now, that's what we're witnessing. The people catching on, and Republicans, leaving the support for, and MAGA, they're, questioning that. So that means that a larger number of Americans, whether they're Republicans or Democrats or independents, are in that move. And with this failure of that militarism that they just got worked on over with trying to get the nuclear material from Iran, those failures are going to become glaring, and they had to do a lot of fibbing, a lot of stuff out there to try to convince the American people. That was a really successful trip. Did you know how they rescued this guy? Oh, well, it was good they could rescue somebody, but how many people did they have? How many other people died? How much money was spent? No, that's not. It was trying to divert people, divert them away from what's really going on. And the real thing that's going on, Chris, is the many things that are happening, and that is we're facing a moral and financial bankruptcy. Chris?
That's right, Dr. Paul. Yeah, I'll start by covering two things that you mentioned there. The first one is the spending, the crazy spending that President Trump is continuing and escalating. Obviously, it's destroying our currency. Just look at prices. That's the destruction of the dollar. If bread is $5, the bread is the same as when it was a nickel or a quarter. It's the money that has been destroyed. So obviously, people want to protect themselves. And we have a small way that we contribute. We have a partnership with Birch Gold Group. And, as people want to get into safer, real money, how do you do it? So you can contact Birch, just with your phone. You could text them Ron to 989898, and they will send you some information to get you started. Not that you have to get started, but you can ask questions, and if it works for you, you can get into gold. That's what they're there for. So again, if you're interested, text Ron to 989898. The second thing is what you mentioned, Dr. Paul, is President Trump turning on his biggest supporters now. He has proven in his second administration especially that he now has a history of turning on people that want to hold him accountable. It started right at the beginning with Elon Musk and Doge and the big beautiful bill. Now, I may be naive, but I personally think Elon was serious about cutting the size of government. And it hit a wall, and whatever happened behind closed doors, it was all squashed, and now it's just government, constant, like what you're saying. The trillions keep piling up. Then there was the Epstein files, and his voters, and not even his voters, but many others too, wanted accountability. And President Trump said, I don't want their support anymore. You're still talking about this hoax? So he was now disavowing his own voters. And now, yesterday, he went for the biggest and most influential people that helped elect this guy and just trashed them. Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones. And it's because they see that the person that they stumped for is a totally different person that has been president this whole year. So Dr. Paul, President Trump is burning all his bridges, and I don't understand what his, end game is.
The effort that Trump is trying to do now and keep his whole administration flowing through there, that he has to, people would say he's lying, distorting the truth, and, punishing the people. Nobody really can understand that. I don't understand it. I can't do it. Politically, I can do it better than, medically, because I think there's some problems there because it doesn't make any sense. And, but I think one statement, what we frequently use is that truth is resented, and that's the position that the president's taken out. And the statement is truth is treason in an empire of lies. When things are built, the whole monetary system is a lie. And so, but they stretch it and do it, and then all of a sudden, the people who talked about less spending and less war, the president, he led the charge. Just about all those people that were on his side in the Congress, they switched the position to vote with Trump, even though it's based on dishonesty, and the things that they're doing, especially in the administration, they turn around and say that these individuals that voted the right way are the enemy, and they vote the way they said they were going to vote. I remember one time Ronald Reagan called me on the phone and wanted me to vote for the B-1 bomber, and I wasn't for it, and he was very, very polite. I was at lunch. I remember him calling. I went out and talked to him, and he said, I'd like you to have that vote, and he very, very polite. And I said to him, Mr. President, I really would like to help you, but when I campaigned against this, and I says it would be real hard. And he said something that was very positive. Well, anyway, thank you, and this sort of thing. And just comparing that attitude, to what we hear now, because it turns them the opposite way. It makes them lie more, and the politicians roll over. And so many of those politicians, Chris, are the ones that we thought were close allies. But it comes to spending, you would think how could they spend one more penny when we're so far in debt? But they still do it. They roll over, and it's a political thing. And I understand the political thing, how these members of Congress think, because all of a sudden it becomes very narrow, and they see themselves as doing the right thing to keep things going, keep the government out of hands of the opposition, because they might spend too much money. And they rationalize, and they deceive themselves, and they go ahead and switch and vote against the very things they campaigned against. So that's why I've always admired President Reagan, for him not badgering me, because I think, even an airplane back then, one of the people, it was a legitimate argument. But right now, what the president wants us to do is not legitimate. All this spending, all these weaponries, and the suffering here at home, and nobody adds up. How many people have died at the hands of our bombs in the last 10 years? I mean, I don't even want to know, because it's so disastrous. And how much money is spent has contributed to the people here at home that are at the bottom of the economic ladder and having trouble. That you don't even hear from them, because, there are more trillionaires than ever before, which is a characteristic of the type of monetary system we have. So I think it's something that has to be addressed. It will be addressed. The market is more powerful than these lies and innuendos and pretenses and just yelling and screaming at people who have an honest disagreement. It's not very ethical. It's not very productive. It's going the wrong way, because people get antagonism. That's why there'll be more fights. I think this election is going to be very, very, caustic. There's going to be a lot of yelling and screaming, because this election is meant to me who's going to be the power of the king 2 years from now. It's power, it's control, it's profits, and I think these events that we're suffering through right now should be used to a benefit, to enlighten the people. How did this happen? Can it be changed? Quite frankly, I think a lot of it could be changed with a change in attitude by the people who are in charge. Chris?
That's right, Dr. Paul. And as long as I have been, following you, which is decades now, You have told the truth. We live in an empire of lies, and we really, really do. And in fact, this president has made that glaring for everyone to see. I mean, politicians bend the truth. You expect it. Don't trust the politicians. It's expected. Fine. But this is another level. And it's not just Trump. It's his administration, Hegseth, Carolyn Levitt. I mean, what are you doing? But they're doing it. Everything is going so perfectly. But enough people know that it is not. It's the exact opposite. The government used to have a lock on information and how it was broadcast to people, whether it was the radios, the TV. There was 3 stations, and that's what they told you is what your neighbor saw and what your other neighbor saw and your teacher, and everybody was repeating the same thing. So it was effective, the lying then. But today, we don't live in that world. That world does exist. There are still people that watch the TV and believe what the Trump administration is saying, but they're now being marginalized. Everybody knows that this Iran war is a huge disaster. No matter how many tens of thousands of targets you hit, that's not the point. So these lies are so bad, and it reminded me of a quote that most people, I'm sure, have heard, and it was from the Soviet Union, a dissident of the Soviet Union, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He said, "We know they are lying. They know they are lying. They know we know that they are lying." And Solzhenitsyn said, "But they are still lying." That is our world. That was the Soviets. This is what has become of America, and it's a shame.
Well, that raises the question. Maybe things will get straightened out. They're talking again. The ceasefire probably is not the most miraculous thing ever. We don't know exactly what's going on, but why are they not, really being honest with themselves? Because what are the chances now of the talks? They should talk. I'm not against that. They're back talking in Pakistan, about how to stop this. But they just had one, and then they're arguing, and our side argues that no, how should we handle Lebanon? Oh, they're not included. Oh, yes, they are included. And then they turn around and have to argue with our closest allies, and when we argue with what's going on. So it is not just our government and our people in charge of our government. It's not very narrow. It's not one political party, but it's international. I mean, the whole motivation of what these. Even when both sides sign these treaties, then they argue about it at another peace treaty that they're trying to straighten out. But they just came away from one that they signed on to and said we're going to do it, and then they don't do it. So it is a problem of morality as much as anything else. How can we lose another war? We've always had the most weaponry. I mean, think of the weaponries and the bombs and the killing in the Vietnam era. How much mess have we done in Iraq and Afghanistan? And yet we continue to do it. We never change our ways. And the markets are more powerful than the politicians. And no matter what they say and what they do and have all the treaties and all these pronouncements and twist it around, even though we did that, and you guys do it, it's the worst thing you ever do, and we're not going to help you, we're going to punish you, we're going to get you out of office. It's back to petty politics. It's really a disgrace. And to me, I take it as a personal insult, and the American people take it as an insult as well. Chris?
I will finish up with my closing thoughts, along the lines of the talks. What are the chances that this is going to bring peace and it's just not a pause? I think, personally, don't think it's very good. Because I see this, again, personally, as a proxy war, similar to how the Ukraine war has been a proxy war. The Ukrainians go fight. You go fight for NATO, for the United States. And, it was supposed to end on day one of presidents. And look, we're now year 2, and that's still going. And most Americans probably forgot about it. But the Ukrainians have not forgot about it. They're still in this proxy war, and we're keeping it going. So this war with Iran, I also view it as a proxy war where we're the proxy, the Americans, for Israel. And the president has already repeatedly said that how important Israel was to us going and being the aggressor and attacking them. So to think that we're going to just stop, that everything is done now, I don't think we're at that point yet. However, there is a big key factor that I think that would help bring it to a close even sooner, and that is Iran's control of that strait. Because the world knows that the United States and Israel are the aggressors, and nobody is coming to help. And the president has complained over and over, even though he doesn't need help, nobody is helping him. Because the world doesn't want to get involved in something that he started. He made a mess, and they're not going to come clean it up. But Iran's control of that strait is harming the world. That's they have a grip. And the more the world suffers, there's a chance the more the world gets angrier and angrier at the U.S. and Israel for doing this. So who knows how this is all just theories that I think of. Who knows what happens, but are we going to get peace? I hope so. But, knowing how these people are, I don't know if we're there yet.
Very good. Many times political activities and wars backfire and exactly opposite of what the goal was, occurs. And I think that's what's happening here. The consequences so far, whether it's in Ukraine or wherever, I mean, just think of all the war and fighting, and we're going to reform the Middle East, rebuild the Middle East, and on and on. And when this evidence comes out and the people start to wake up and people get they get despondent and they're just get discouraged because things look so bad. But I try to look at it a different way. You have to search sometime to get a positive on it. The one thing is, when it's so obvious and so dangerous and makes no sense, that more and more people wake up, and I think that's good. I always quote the whole idea of change of attitude on COVID, all the dumb stuff. People woke up, fairly quickly compared to other times. So some of the dumb stuff will wake up more people. And I think what we're witnessing here, especially in the last week, there's loss of credibility with our officials who are really in charge. And I think that's good. Question what the government tells us. When there's an assassination, and there's several major and well known, that all the effort was to cover it up and make sure nobody ever found out that CIA might have been involved. So, but after time, the truth comes out. But that's the biggest thing, because when this happens, the government loses credibility, and if they lose credibility because they never seem to be on the part of balanced budget, sound money, and restoring sensibility. So I think it's good. But the big thing is the chaos that is created is welcomed by Marxists as well, because they can play on it and build up and say, it's a big business. Well, it's big business when making billions and billions of dollars off of militarism. Yes, it is. But that is an understanding of what's happening. But when the people wake up, it's very important they have an option and know what's going on. What are you going to substitute it with? And too often, the Marxists are sitting there, we'll take care of you. Well, maybe New York City will prove it won't be so easy to take care of the people. So I think that we can look at that, because what we need to do is not all that complicated. Sometimes I would give a talk to college kids. I said, where do we start? What do we do? What do we do? And I said, the first thing you could do is everybody should read the Constitution, at least have a guideline on what we should be doing, which we don't. It just emphasizes not make it complicated, because one of the principles that is so important under these conditions is voluntarism. If you have a difficult decision deciding about civil liberties or foreign policy, just say, make both sides voluntary, don't know nobody else. But if the aggressor usually is identified, and that's a problem that we're facing right now, because a lot of people are believing that we're not exactly drawn in to stop a war like we were told we would do. But the big picture is just the understanding of non-interventionism. We don't want to have people, if they have a neighbor they don't like, the other neighbor can't go in and dictate and tell that neighbor how he's going to be a better person. Everybody can, they can remain neighbors if there's respect, and if they do anything, it has to be voluntary, and that makes a big difference. And yet we give up on it so often. But intervening and telling people how to do, it's a negative from the beginning. And therefore, we have to make sure that people have an education, which is practically impossible in a government-run school system, which has gone on for a lot of years, how we transitioned from the principles and desire and respect for a true republic to the point what we have now. We have a pure democracy dictated by the special interest groups banding together and getting 51% of the vote, and then punishing the 49% of the people who have to work and suffer the consequence of this pure democracy. As soon as you get 51%, liberty should not be voted down just because a pseudo monopoly majority was, practices it and does it. Freedom is not all that difficult to understand. And that's certainly what we talk about in this program, is try to explain to people why living in a society which we had a taste of in the past is the best way to go if you're interested in peace, if you're interested in prosperity, and most people are. That you have to go by way of emphasizing and understanding why voluntarism and individualism and responsibility is the way to go, rather than saying dictatorial powers have to be it because the government knows best. And too many people say the worse things get, the more government they want. That will not work. We have to reignite the enthusiasm and the understanding of what a true republic is all about. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Thanks for watching the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Like and subscribe to help spread the message. And until next time, live free.
This country is in a revolution, and I happen to be lucky enough to be part of it.